everyone, it's Sequoia with BE The Code, and we are here with special guest Mike Brown, CEO and founder of Win Win, a fantasy football app that the players and the fans win. Hey Mike, how are you doing?
Doing well. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Good. So before we get into all of the glitz and glam that Mike is, we want to know who you are personally first. So we're going to play a game.
Okay.
It's called Truth, Lie. So you get to tell me two truths and a lie, and I'm going to guess which one is which. You ready? Now come up with some extremes that I wouldn't know because we're friends. So What wouldn't I know about you?
What wouldn't you know about me? Okay. I have 15 brands.
Okay. Would like you own them?
No, like I got brands.
Oh, brands. Like, okay. like Nike, Adidas?
For fraternity. But
Okay. All right. Cool.
15 brands.
Uh-huh.
I've traveled to 11 countries.
Okay.
And I don't know. My middle name is Sean.
No, it's not.
It is.
Where's
That's my government.
Oh, really?
Yeah. My mom is Samoan.
Okay.
My dad's black, and my mom moved from Samoa when she was 19. Raised me as a single mother when she was about 23. And you know, I was born Michael Sean Brown.
I did not know that.
And when I got to Duke, I played ball, right, and I was a freshman All-American.
Uh-huh.
And you know, growing up, you know, I look how I look, and so nobody really knew in Texas what Samoa was. Everybody just assumed I was either adopted or my mama was Mexican. And and you know, so growing up, obviously I identify with both. I grew up in a Samoan household.
Okay.
With just my mom. And you know, as I kind of started to grow up and mature and learn a lot more about that side of my family, you know, I was very proud of kind of my uniqueness. And when I got to Duke and was getting a lot of press around, you know, my ability on the field, I had made a bold decision to change my last name from Brown to Tauili'ili after my great grandfather, who was the chief in Samoa. And so, you know, it was a play tribute to my family, obviously, and be able to highlight that uniqueness that I did have. And you know, when they say Michael Brown on a tackle, that could be anybody, but when you hear Mike Tauili'ili, you know, it kind of resonates with a certain group of folks. So it was something that I did, and that's what I played under as well, professionally too.
Love that. I did not know that story. That's so cool. Okay, so which one is the lie?
I don't have 15 brands. I have 9.
Okay, so what are your 9 brands?
So I have it's all Omega Psi-Phi.
Okay.
I can't tell you the meaning of where they're positioned, but I mean, there's 2 on the chest. Got 5 on my back, 2 under my arm. So 8, yeah, and then 1 on my wrist.
All right.
So this was I pledged Omega back in at Duke, spring 2007.
Okay.
And when you go through all of that, you want every brand you can get. So I was happily involved in that process.
Repping for the Qs.
Q Dogs.
All right, cool. So tell us more about Win Win.
Yeah, so Win Win. First, I got to correct you. So you said it was a fantasy platform, and I know last time we talked, it was that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm happy to announce that we've expanded to include other what I call social games that aren't just fantasy.
Okay.
And you know, the reason that was because we knew that the fantasy market was red hot, but we realized that there was a lot of issues going on in the market. Primarily, the one that I realized initially, being a former professional athlete, I realized that these fantasy companies, FanDuel, DraftKings, like they're making billions of dollars, and the athletes that are featured on these apps aren't getting anything. They don't, you know, there's a handful of guys that get endorsement deals. So these guys' likeness are being used to generate billions of dollars, and they're not getting anything. So what I set out to solve was that issue. But being a former player, I knew kind of what motivates athletes outside of, you know, cash. And, you know, a lot of players try to use their platform for good, right?
Mm-hmm.
They try to raise awareness for things they care about. And so looking at the fantasy market, and people basically pay money, and then that money gets accumulated, and then whoever wins or ranks highest takes all the money, or a majority of the money. And so what I figured was, let's put that money to good use, right? To something that the athletes care about. And in exchange, the athletes then give you something that money can't buy, an experience like, having dinner with, Russell Wilson, or flying on a private jet with Patrick Peterson, which we did earlier this year. And, it's really solved a few pain points for multiple parties within this platform, right? So for the users, we're now bridging that gap because they're getting access and experiences with athletes and influencers that they typically would never be able to access, right?
Okay.
And they're also donating to charity. So I always used to say, now you don't have to, lie to your wife about the money you just gambled away. Now you can be proud that you supported Feed the Children that week. And as an athlete, you're now able to raise awareness and funding for things you care about. It's not mandated by the league or the NFLPA. It can be your own foundation or things that you just care about. And on top of that, out of that situation comes positive PR, marketability. These are things every player cares about because your brand is what leads to endorsement deals and having a bigger fan base. You have the athletes buying in. You have the fans buying in. The charities are benefiting, and it's a win-win. That's why we just call the company what it is.
Love it. Okay, so I know that you've raised $1 million for this platform, and you came from the NFL, like that was your thing coming into this. What was that process like, going from the NFL to like working in tech to actually being a tech founder?
Yeah, it was crazy, man. If you would have told me, I guess now 4 or 5 years ago, that I'd be sitting here, talking to you about a tech startup that I'm running, I'd probably laugh. It was funny because I didn't know anything about the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, tech, any of that until 2013. And for most, compared to most people out here, that's very late. And, the way the story goes is, as I was playing, coming out of Duke, I was a public policy major, and I was actually on the law school track. I'd already taken the LSAT, was looking at kind of entertainment law, whatever. And then I went on to play. And while I was playing, a lot of talks around, business ideas. And, I'm asking guys where they're putting their money. And, it was a lot of, like, I started to shift focus, like, kind of like this business, thing, this entrepreneur thing. But still no context of what Silicon Valley was. So all I knew at that point was, you want to start a business, you go get your MBA, take out a small business loan, and you start some business. And you obviously can still do that, right? But that's all I knew. So as I was transitioning out in 2013, I had taken the GMAT and was actually on track to go to Rice, go back home to Houston, go to Rice, get my MBA. And, fate would have it, as I was kind of preparing for that, a good friend of mine who I played ball with, he was a computer science major at Duke, and he was actually in the NFL. He was playing for the Giants and like building apps on the side. Very bizarre.
Love it.
Right? And so he was one of the only people I knew that kind of had some idea of what was happening out here, because he was in the tech. And so he had called me one day, because we always just kind of bounce ideas off each other. He was like, man, I've heard about this program out in the Bay Area. It's supposed to be brand new, but it's supposed to be kind of cool. You should check it out. And, honestly, he told me, and I'm like, all right, yeah, whatever, Silicon Valley, cool. But I had no real intention of checking it out, to be honest. But he made it easy. He texted me the link. So I just, clicked, and I started reading through, and I'm starting to read about some guy named Tim Draper. And, I'm looking, and it's kind of weird. And like, I had just started, I think Black in Silicon Valley had just aired like recently at some point on CNN.
Okay.
And so that was kind of a little more context. But all I knew was Facebook was here. And, honestly, I thought they made breast because it was Silicon Valley.
Oh, my goodness.
That was the context of my understanding. And, again, I kind of took a leap of faith. I actually applied after the deadline and, was kind of waiting around. And then Tim Draper himself called me and was like, hey, like, we loved your application, love your story, you're in, full scholarship, the whole nine. And it was I wasn't expecting that. And so, at that point, I just prayed on it, and I was like, let me just take a shot. So I held off on going to business school and took a chance on this 9-week program, which turned out to be all kinds of like crazy and amazing all at the same time, as you would know. And, what happened was kind of like 3 weeks in, I was a little upset that I did not know that this existed, right? Like, I'm like, how did I not know about, the fact that you can come out here and just build and create, because it was really pulling on a lot of the natural abilities that I felt like I had. And, I was doing really well in the program, finished in the number 1 team, and and kind of came out of there like with my chest out, like, all right, I can do this. Like, I love this. This is kind of allowing me to use my natural ability. So at that point I had made a decision, like, I'm moving here. Like, this is, I'm not doing business school. I'm moving here and we're going to make it happen. Now, at the same time, life was also happening. And so, I was getting engaged. Now we're expecting a daughter. And, rather than moving out here with no family, it was like, all right, let's go back to Houston, kind of get our affairs in order, have the baby around family. And I had a 3-month plan, right? I was working on this other idea when I was going through the program. So when we moved back in June, I had a 3-month plan to basically go have the baby in August, raise a bunch of money from all these investors that love my idea, so I thought, and then move right back and become the next Mark Zuckerberg. And again, as life would have it, that was not the case. And had to realize that that 9-week program, while it did a lot, it didn't do enough. And I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
So at that time, I taught myself how to code, design. I took time to really prep myself for this bigger move that, eventually happened 12 months later. So 3 turned into 12. And on the way, when we were about to move, we find out we got another one on the way.
Oh, man.
So
life was happening
life
to
was
you.
Definitely happening. So we're a young, married couple with, one here and one on the way, and moving to Silicon Valley. I didn't even have a job. And I had this, this big plan to run the world, like start my own company and make it happen. So we moved out here just really on faith, and thank God we landed on our feet. And so then it kind of changed, shifted focuses, and rather than focusing on building my own little terrible idea, what I realized it was, I said, let me go work at a startup. Let me go get on the inside and really understand how this thing works.
Right.
And so, I got here and it took me about a month and a half or so, but I ended up getting hired at a company called Keep. It's a startup. It was a little further along than your earlier stage startups, but they had raised, at that point, they were going into Series B. And but it was run by Brian Wong, who, was a 18-year-old Asian kid that, or at the time when he started the company, he was 18. He was the youngest person to ever raise VC funding.
That is crazy.
He graduated college at 18.
Oh my God.
He was one of those guys from Canada.
Okay.
And so, long story short, I knew a guy I didn't know him. It was a Duke alum that I saw on their staff that went to Duke, and he was the leader of the growth team. He was the VP of growth.
Okay.
And so just kind of reached out, like, and turns out he was a freshman my senior year.
Okay.
So we didn't know each other, but I just reached out, said, hey, I'm Mike. I'm in the Bay, just trying to get acclimated. I don't know if you know who I am, but I'd love to, pick your brain. He's like, hell yeah, I know who you are. He's like, you're all-American, like, come on by the office. And so I met with him on a Monday, and I didn't go in there like, give me a job. I just said, hey, I'm in the Bay, just connecting with other alum. And he's like, well, we got a couple opportunities if you're interested. And the story goes, I met him on a Monday, interviewed on Friday, started on Tuesday. And now I'm in the tech
Love
game.
It.
And so kind of came in there entry level, and within 4 or 5 months, ended up moving into leadership, and now I'm leading the growth team. And at that point, I was learning a lot, getting a lot of experience, knowledge, network, talking to a lot of people that when you get out here, you just feel that energy. So I was talking to a lot of entrepreneurs and founders, and realized that what I was like working on initially was not what it's not 10x as they call it, right? It wasn't something that I really knew I wanted to get behind. Mm-hmm. So at that point, I'm just kind of working on, I'm in the tech game, and just, again, I'm just kind of building, and I'm hitting a nice stride. We're doing well. And in November or September of last year, that's kind of when the light bulb struck for me. And again, the story goes, there was a bunch of FanDuel and DraftKings commercials just hitting me like they were everybody. And that's, as the problem that I mentioned earlier, I'm like, okay, I get why they're promoting it so hard, but why don't I see any of my friends in the NFL promoting it, right? Like, hey, pick me up on your fantasy lineup. Nobody was doing that. And so I just picked up the phone, started calling a bunch of friends, like, what do you think about this? Do you like this? And the majority of them were like, no, because we ain't getting no money. and so many people,
how do we get paid?
Right, exactly. So many people are abusing athletes and influencers, and honestly, everybody thinks that, if you've been in the NFL for 5 minutes, like you a millionaire.
Right.
Like that ain't,
right.
The average the average guy is not even, making it like that, right? It's what our coaches always told us. It's just a good head start.
Right,
but you better have your affairs in order for when that day comes. And so that's where the idea started to kind of take off. And in the office at Keep, there was a bunch of guys that were really into fantasy. And it was funny because they assumed, because I played ball, that I was just into fantasy as they were. And so it's like, oh, Mike, we got the league coming up. Like, you got to, pay $100 and, join the league, and we're going to have a draft and beers and all. I'm like, okay, sounds cool. And I was like, but I had never played fantasy.
Okay.
And so they were like, hey, man, you got to get in. It's the deadline. And I'm like, look, I'm going to just come clean. Like, I don't play fantasy. Like, I like to think I play reality.
That ain't me.
Right. Exactly. Right. And so I'm like, I'm good on that. I was like, I would literally just be giving y'all $100.
Right.
Mind you, I got 2 babies at the crib. They wouldn't appreciate
that.
Get
it
away. They would not appreciate that. So, and that's when he kind of broke it down to me. He was like, well, no, it's not about the money, man. Like, it's fun. We get to compete. We talk a little shit in the office, and somebody gets a couple $100 at the end of the year, but that's not what it's about.
Right.
And again, I didn't know their motivation because I never played, and so. Wait, what? The money is not what matters? And they're like, no. And so that's where kind of the light bulb was like, well, okay, so if the money doesn't matter, let's let that go here. And in exchange, you win something that money can't buy. Boom, we were off to the races. Once I started to get a lot of good feedback and traction on it, just talking to friends, talking to random people, then I was like, okay, now this idea is now turning into an obsession to where I'm focused totally on that, staying up days at a time at home and kind of just throwing up on paper, trying to formalize this idea. And come November, that's when the transition happened. And it was funny because I was actually planning to leave. Like, I had been talking to my wife and talking to some friends, like, like, this is why I moved here. You know what I mean? Like, it's go time. Like, this is why we here. And it's still a very hard decision to make because, again, I got babies, I got little mouths to feed. I'm not one of these young founders out here on a ramen noodle budget. You know what I mean? Like, I got to get it. And so what ended up happening, this was the kind of crazy part about the story, was that, I was kind of making my strategy, right? And I'm big into my faith. And one of the things that a quote that I love is, if you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plan.
Right.
And so I'm coming up with this amazing plan to, like, exit the company and go in and hit the ground running. And that wasn't until January. Well, what ended up happening, in November, previous, like in October, late October, my wife lost her father. And we kind of hit this season where we were kind of just going through it, both personally, with her family, and then professionally something happened where it's a startup. There was restructuring. I ended up getting laid off. Okay. And I mean, it came out of nowhere. I mean, I had just got a raise. I'm moving on up, and they called me in and showed me the door. And I'm like, what?
You're like, wait a minute, I was supposed to be
exactly
up in this company.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so again, one thing that I also say is, you be careful, like, because when you pray for something, you got to be ready to receive, what that answer is. And for me, I'd been praying a lot about, when's the right time to make this move. Okay. Right. And boom, now the move has been made for me. I incorporated the company mid-January. 2 weeks later, went to the Fantasy Sports Trade Association conference, the biggest conference of the year for the fantasy industry. Okay. And Mark Cuban was the keynote speaker. And, basically they had this pitch competition where 25 new companies in the fantasy industry could pitch their business idea or what they were doing for 3 minutes in front of 500 members of the audience. And, the whole audience would vote. And, it was really interesting because I didn't play fantasy. I just knew that this conference was happening. I had heard about it late, went down there. I'm the only one that looked like me in the whole building. And, nobody was checking for me. It was funny because I'm just kind of walking around. I'm staying to myself. I'm down there for one reason only. Right. I don't care about these sessions. I want to get to the pitch and just kind of see what the reaction is. And nobody was really talking to me. And then again, what I did was, back to the name thing, I kind of changed my name back to Michael Brown. Okay. Right? Mike T. Brown to be exact. And the reason that was because, and this is, I don't know how people feel about this, but this is how I feel is, names say a lot, right? And like, people come up with these preconceived notions just based off what they hear in your name, right? And for Tauili in football is really good, right? You hear like Troy Polamalu, like you know that okay, Samoan warrior like is gonna be real on the field. But in corporate and like business, those kind of names come off as foreign and not as smart or whatever, right? So anyway, I went back to Mike T. Brown, and so when they called up the name on the stage, it said, next up, win-win Michael Brown, right? And that could be anybody, right? And here I go, I get up and tatted up, I'm walking on stage, and everybody's like, what's going on? This guy,
who are you?
Right? What are you doing? Your stage hands, like, and so I get up there and I bring the energy right out the gate. And, in 3 minutes. Told them what the deal was, and they voted, and I got named number 1 most innovative fantasy sports business 2016. And so that was really big for me coming out the gate, and it kind of gave me some momentum. And again, mind you, I still got the babies at the house, so I got now the first milestone is getting that first check, right from an investor, and that's what I was on. And within 9 months, was able to raise what I raised and built a small team, built the platforms. There was a lot of little details in there, and it was a lot of ups and downs. But again, I didn't see any other option.
So we know that you play for the NFL, the Colts.
Colts.
Yep. So I have a little bit of NFL trivia.
Oh Lord.
Okay.
So
this is how this game is gonna work. I'm gonna ask you some questions. You have 1 minute to answer at least 4 of these questions, right? But here's the trick. If you do not answer the question right, then you're going to have to eat gummy worms. And you're going to have to keep them in your mouth. Like, you don't have to swallow them because I don't want you to die. But you're going to have to keep them in your mouth the entire time until...
While I'm still answering...
While you're still answering questions.
Am I chewing them or...
It's up to you.
But I can't eat it.
You can't eat it.
Okay.
All right? You have 60 seconds to answer all of the questions. All you have to do is get, what I say, 4? 5?
4.
4 right. Okay, ready?
Will I get a bonus? Then you eat them if I get them all right?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. And start. For what professional football team did Walter Payton play?
Walter Payton, Chicago Bears.
In what year did Jim Brown lead professional football in rushing?
What year did he lead it? 1981. What's the answer?
Eat them. 1957.
Oh, damn.
Which 2 teams competed in the Super Bowl 50?
Carolina Panthers and Denver Broncos.
Okay. Who was the first black quarterback to play professional football?
Oh, man. I know he went to Grambling.
What's his name? You ran out of time, quick.
Can't remember his name.
Eat gummy worms.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Who was the first African-American inductee into the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
That guy.
Next. Who was the first team in NFL history to win 11 or more games in 5 consecutive years?
The Patriots.
No, the Colts.
Oh.
Did you play for the Colts?
Maybe not then.
Your time is up.
I'm not get it right though.
All right. So you got 2 out of, let's see.
Man, them some good questions though.
You got 2 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, shit. Good job. Good job. You didn't do bad.
It's all right.
Okay. So, how do people find you?
Good question. So, you can check out the platform at trywinwin.com. Our Instagram is the same, at trywinwin. Twitter is actually win_win. And our Facebook, you just search Try Win Win, all one word. And as the name states, Try Win Win. And we're gonna eventually move into just winwin.com, but we kind of like Try Win Win right now. And plus, winwin.com is like $80,000. But yeah, that's how they can find us. You can find me at chief_MT. I don't accept everybody to follow, but that's where you can find me.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming out. Mike Brown, founder and CEO of Win-Win with Sequoia on BE The Code.
There it is. Thank you.